Welcome, thank you for joining me on my channel, What Helen Reads. I'm Helen and today I've got another Mafia Romance Monday video for you. So today is all about first impressions, and we all know that first impressions count. So what I thought I'd do was go back over the last 6 months, pick out the new to me authors, so Mafia Romance authors I hadn't previously read, let you know how I got on with the book that I chose, and also whether or not I'm going to continue to read any more books from this particular author. So we're going to go backwards in chronological order. So the most recent new to me author that I read was actually Jane Henry, and I picked up the Bratva's Baby as part of the Mafia Romance read-along just last month. Now this one was book 1 in the Wicked Doms series, and it's a Russian mafia romance, and this one was actually set in Russia, at least for the majority of this story. We were following Aidee and Casimir, and basically Casimir is kind of like the enforcer for his Russian mafia, but he has been sent to America to seduce a lady called Aidee because she is set to inherit a large amount of money, and the idea is that he will convince her to marry him and then he can take control of her inheritance, and then the idea after that is to get rid of her in some way. So Casimir goes off, he's in America, he started to track Aidee down. The thing is, she is a bit of a bookworm, she's actually a librarian, she's quite nerdy, she doesn't have very many friends, and she is completely overwhelmed and so totally taken aback that a man like Casimir would even be interested in her, and she's very flattered. So it wouldn't actually take too much for Casimir to completely win her over. The problem is with this one is that his boss calls him home early and he doesn't have any time to seduce her. So after a first initial few encounters where he is very charming, he then decides he's going to kidnap her and take her back to Russia with him. And this is kind of where his personality completely changes, at least from her perspective, because he becomes very dominant and insistent with her about how she's going to behave and what she's going to do. And he's not afraid to use his dominance to, you know, make sure that she submits, shall we say. So this one does have quite a heavy BDSM element, although it is pretty non-consensual to start with. He's going to force her. In fact, in this one, we really get the sense that there's a pattern here and that he is also quite proficient in training submissive, shall we say, although we're not quite sure what happens to them after he's finished training them, and if everything's above board or whether they kind of do something with the women afterwards, we're really not sure. Anyway, of course what's going to happen is that he's actually going to start to have real feelings for her, so when it comes time to maybe have to get rid of her, he's not going to want to take that step. Plus we find out that some other things are going on in this mafia and things may not all be as it seems. So overall I actually rated this one 3.5 stars, rounded up to 4 stars on Goodreads. I did enjoy it, it was a fun time. My biggest problem with this though is the shift in Casimir overall. So like I say, he starts out quite charming, then he gets extremely dominant and very forceful with our heroine, and then towards the end of the book there's another sort of shift where she finds out that she's pregnant, and I don't feel that this is a spoiler since it is actually called the Bratva's Baby, so you're going to guess at some point that this lady is going to fall pregnant, and then when he finds out that he's going to be a father, again his personality almost completely switches back to this really charming person who suddenly really cares about her. So I was a bit disappointed with the turn because I really felt like this had built quite a lot of momentum at the start of the book, and all of the wind was really knocked out of his sails from a, you know, a BDSM perspective, from him being a dom and her being a sub, when this reveal happened, and that was reflected in the rating. But would I read anything again from Jane Henry? Yes, I absolutely would. I love Russian mafia romances. She's written quite a lot of them. So I would definitely be interested in reading more from this series, but some other series that she's done. She's got a number of different mafia series that look interesting. I did, however, join part of the Mafia Romance readathon. I actually also did go on to read a book by Jane Henry that she co-wrote with Sophie Lark, which was The Bratva's Heir, and I did really enjoy that one, rated that one 4 stars, and enjoyed that one much more than this first one. So I did kind of go on to read another one by Jane Henry, although she, like I say, she did co-write that one with Sophie Lark. So I'll be definitely looking up more of hers again in the future. Then another author I picked up during the readathon was Dukey, in particular Dukey, because she's going to be at Rare 24 in Edinburgh, and I wanted to read a couple of her books before I went to the sign-in. She actually co-wrote a book called Vlad with Webster. So actually this is a co-written book with her and Webster. And it was book 1 in the V Games. Now, unfortunately, I really didn't enjoy this one at all. Gave it a very generous 3 stars. It was a Russian mafia romance, and while I do normally love those, and also very sort of like dominant, possessive, a-hole heroes, I just felt that the hero in this one, Vlad, just took it a bit too far. He was a little bit too icy for me, a little bit too harsh, a little bit too self-centered, and I never really warmed to his character, and even the heroine I didn't particularly get along with. She was supposed to be, you know, this virgin, innocent woman. Yes, of course, she was a Russian mafia princess herself, so, you know, was aware of what, you know, the family did. So not totally innocent in that sense, but she you know, as soon as she came to live with Vlad, because essentially this book was a kind of an arranged marriage with, and he was supposed to marry her sister, and then she came to live in the house with him, and then they started to have kind of like this sort of an affair behind her sister's back. And so I didn't really like how this kind of went down, because there was cheating in this one, and also being so innocent and such a nice person, she was only too happy to help him train some women to go into the V Games. So the whole book didn't really gel for me, it didn't work for me. And so, like I say, yeah, I gave this one a very generous 3 stars. Now, would I read any more from Dukey? Yes, I definitely would. I don't think I'll continue with this series. It didn't interest me at all. And even though it's set up the next couple of couples, I'm just not interested enough to force myself to read those. However, she has got a couple of other series that do look interesting, and some that she wrote by herself without co-writing with Webster. One of them is an MC series, which I do like an MC romance, so I would be prepared to give that one a try. And also she's written a series of books called The Elite. There's 7 books in that series, and each one is named after one of the 7 sins, the first book being called Lust. So that also does look interesting, and I might pick that one up at some point as well. Then the next one was Charity Ferrell. I read one of her books in March, and I picked up Gorgeous Monster. Now this one was actually recommended by a viewer, so thank you very much if you recommended that. It was one that I put into my jar and picked out of the TBR jar to be read in the month of March. This one was a fairly shortish book, less than 300 pages, and it's book 1 in the Marchetti crime family. I rated this one 3.5 stars, rounded up to 4 stars. And it was an Italian mafia, age gap, best friend's dad, and kind of a marriage deal in this one. Now, I did like this one. I like the writing style. I enjoyed sort of the storyline. I thought it was, you know, not massively original, but still enjoyed the plot on this one. The thing for me was, again, the hero in this one is very, very kind of like dominant. He's quite cold. And I didn't feel this book was long enough really for him to really, you know, develop his character, shall we say, and really soften towards the heroine. And there was quite an abrupt turn where he is pretty mean to her up to a certain point, and then suddenly decides that he's massively in love with her and can't live without her. And I thought the switch just happened a little bit too quickly for me, but other than that, I did enjoy this one. So in this one, we're following Christian and Natalia, and essentially what happens is Natalia is actually his daughter's best friend, so there's quite a big age gap here. Now she is, at the start of this book, she has been dating someone from another mafia. They split up, and now this ex-boyfriend is trying to get her back, and if he can't win her back, then he is prepared to eliminate her because he is so enraged that she would leave him. So she is very much fearful that she's going to lose her life, and so she goes to Christian and begs him for help, thinking that, you know, being her best friend's dad, he's gonna help her. Of course, he is not that interested in her at all. He obviously knows that it's his daughter's best friend, and you know, he has some sympathy because of that, but mainly because he just wants to make sure that his daughter is happy with him and really doesn't care too much about Natalia at all. However, he decides that actually he can probably use this as a bit of leverage, because he can use it then against this other mafia group and, you know, kind of poke the bear, shall we say, if he has got the girlfriend. Now, at first he just offers sanctuary in his home, but then things start to change between them, and in the end they enter into kind of a marriage of convenience. So she's forced to marry him so that she can continue to ensure that he can protect her. And of course then one thing leads to another, and they kind of fall in love. What I really liked about this one is it really did set up the next couple of books in the series. I am particularly interested in what's going to happen to a couple of the other characters, because there's lots of politicking going on, shall we say, behind the scenes with the mafia, and it's very, very clear that her friend has got feelings for the ex-boyfriend's brother, and so that's going to be kind of a bit of a forbidden romance at that point, because they are obviously you know, from two competing families, so a bit of a Romeo and Juliet situation going on. So at some point I definitely will go back to this series and continue with it. I did enjoy it enough to do that, but I'm not sure exactly when that will be. Then the next author I read was Gabrielle Sans, and I picked up the first book in the Fallen series, which is When She Unravels, and this series has had quite a lot of hype, lots of people reading this whole series and absolutely loving it. So I definitely wanted to get to it and managed to get to it in March. Now, I did really enjoy this one, rated it 4.5 stars, rounded up to 5 on Goodreads, and I definitely will be going on to read the other books in this series. So spoiler, went straight to the punchline there, just as soon as I have time to get to it, basically. So in this first one, we're following Damiano and Valentina. They're both mafia. Damiano kind of controls the island of Ibiza, and Valentina comes from a mafia family in New York. Now, she's a mafia princess, so she was arranged in marriage to her father's kind of enforcer, and she was happy to do this because this was her duty. However, just as soon as she gets married, she starts to realise that this husband of hers is not particularly a nice man, and he's going to force her to do some terrible things. So he's not a good person at all. Obviously he's mafia, he's not going to be good, but he is particularly cruel and vindictive, and he loves nothing better than to capture someone, take them to his basement and torture them, and basically as soon as he marries Valentina, he forces her to take part in this activity as well, and so she is living a completely horrific life, and she's become quite depressed about this, quite isolated, doesn't like to go out and socialise because she just can't even bear to speak to her sisters or her mother about what is going on. Now, one day push comes to shove, and her husband brings home a woman and takes her down into the basement, and this is too much for Valentina, and she decides that enough is enough, and she's going to take action, injure her husband, and then help this woman escape. And together they kind of leave the country on a plane, and she ends up in Spain, and then finally getting another plane to Ibiza, and that's kind of where she is going to hide out, desperately hoping that her husband is not going to track her down. Of course, when she's there, she bumps into Damiano. He, like I said, is also in the mafia, controls the island of Ibiza, although she has absolutely no idea, and she genuinely thinks he's just a club owner because he owns a series of restaurants and clubs in Ibiza. And she begs him for a job, and she starts to work for him in one of his nightclubs as a cleaner. And so I kind of put this down as a bit of a workplace romance as well, hidden identity, obviously, because she's keeping her identity a secret, although he starts to figure out that she's not exactly telling the truth, and she's not who she says she is. Then when they start to get close, they're very attracted to each other, and when they finally find out who the other person is, then things are gonna go from there. So I really did like it. Like I say, absolutely will be reading the other books in this series. So then back in January, I finally got around to reading Sinners Anonymous by Somme Sketcher, and this has been on my TBR for a while. In fact, I think from the Mafia Romance Readathon the year before. It's book 1 in the Sinners Anonymous series, We were following Rory and Angelo in this one. I really did enjoy this one. I rated it 4 stars. I thought it was actually quite unique plot in this one, and the tropes in it were that it was an age gap, it was a fiance's nephew, and she was marrying the uncle basically because it was a marriage of convenience. Now when you kind of read the blurb in this one, you kind of really get the sense that she is you know, a young girl marrying this much older man into the mafia, but that the nephew is going to come home and then they're going to start to have an affair behind the you know, the fiance's back, and things are going to go from there. But that isn't what happens at all. What we actually discover is that Rory is a local person. She's lived in this town where this mafia are for a very long time, and she absolutely loves living there, but mostly she loves her father, and her father unfortunately has dementia, and one of the only places that he can be where he is kind of safe is in this house in kind of like this wooded area, and there's a lake there and everything as well. It's the one place that he can still, you know, recall who he is, and she can go and meet with him basically and have a fantastic time with him. So when the mafia is very much thinking about you know, knocking down all the trees, basically clearing out the land to build a new casino, she is desperate to do anything basically to ensure that her father can stay where he is. And so she kind of does a deal then with this mafia guy to say, please don't knock anything down, and he says, okay, I won't if you marry me. And so she agrees to marry him and becomes his fiance. Meanwhile, this land that this guy is threatening to, you know, destroy basically, doesn't actually belong to him. It actually belongs to Angelo, because Angelo is also part of the mafia and they own different portions of the town, different sections of land, but he's been gone for a number of years, and so the other mafia sort of factions, shall we say, are kind of trying to move in on his land. And so eventually Angelo does return to the area, realises what's going on, and kind of confronts his uncle about what's happening. What I really liked about this, and the bit that I think made it really unique, is this whole concept of Sinners Anonymous. So basically this is a hotline that people can ring to share their sins basically. You know, if you've got any sins, ring, like redeem yourself over the telephone. And what we find out is that somebody is listening to the sins that people are saying over the phone, and depending on how severe the sin is, you know, there is a vigilante basically taking retribution and making sure that people kind of are punished for the sins that they've committed. And it's funny because Rory has used the hotline before, has you know, revealed a number of her sins, and then becomes very, very concerned that someone's going to figure out what her sins are and come after her. And yeah, I really liked it. I liked it so much, and it also set up the next couple of books really well, that I definitely will be continuing on with this series. However, I haven't so far, and what has stopped me is the fact that this series is not yet finished. I think the next 2 books are actually like a duet, so you have to read both of them, and then the character that I really, really want to read more about is the book after that, which is not yet written. So I'm going to wait until the series is finished. I don't know when Somme Sketcher is planning to write any more, but then I think I will go back to this and carry on with the read, because like I say, I did really like it and thought it was unique. Then in January I also read a book by L.K. Shaw called The Devil I Don't Know. Now this is a fairly short-ish book, less than 300 pages, so a very quick read, and it was book 1 in the Brooklyn Kings series, and we were following Jacob and Brenna. Now this is like an Irish Italian mafia pairing, so an arranged marriage between these two. But essentially what had happened was Jacob was the heir to you know, his mafia organisation, but his father was still very much alive and in control. And about 8 years prior to the start of this book, something very, very tragic happened. He was married and lost his wife, and something terrible also happened to his cousin, and he is very, very heartbroken and very distraught about what's happened, and he decided that he needed a break from the life, and he kind of moved away, and so he's been gone for about 8 years. The thing is, people are still expecting him to return at some point, and when his father gets really, really sick, he calls him home and says, I've given you 8 years to mourn, that's more than enough time, but it's time to come back, step up to the plate, I'm dying, so you really need to start taking over. And then of course, because he's been gone for so long, he needs to prove his loyalty, and one of the ways they want him to do that is to marry Brenna, who is from the Irish Mafia. And that's what happens. Of course, this is a typical story where he says, we'll get married, but there's no way I'm ever gonna love you because I'm still in love with my, you know, my first wife. But of course, it's literally only about 2 days before his resistance fails him, and he takes her to his bed, and then about 5 days until he decides that he's basically falling in love with her. So I liked this one. It was a quick and easy read, but there was nothing really to write home about. It was nothing special and not particularly memorable either. If I came across another book by L.K. Shaw that attracted my attention, I would definitely pick it up. This book hasn't put me off the author, but neither has it made me really, really want to rush to read any more of their books. So then the next one is S.J. Tilley. I actually read a book by S.J. Tilley for the first time back in November, and I absolutely loved it. So I don't think I have to talk too much about these. Again, this series by S.J. Tilley, the Alliance series, has absolutely kind of blown up. Loads of people are raving about it. Loads of people really, really like this one. And I absolutely agree. It is not the most serious of mafia romances. The heroes in this whole series are completely over the top, wacky, crazy. Some parts are a little bit unbelievable, but it is so much fun, and I would highly recommend you pick up this series if you haven't already. And as a testament to how much I love this series, as soon as I read it, I immediately needed to get myself the full series. So here is book 1, Nero, in the, you know, in the original covers, and then S.J. Tilley offered the opportunity to buy a limited edition version of all of these books, and I absolutely had to pick those up as well. And so I have a full set of the limited edition one, and here is the copy of Nero. So you can see them side by side here. I like the ones with the, you know, the cover models on, but the limited editions are beautiful. They're kind of embossed and with shiny elements as well. So really, really loving these. So I think that's more than a good enough endorsement of that series, the fact that I own 2 copies of each of the books, and would happily buy more if more became available. Incidentally, my favourite one in that series is Dom, which is book 3. I absolutely love that one. The hero is crazy, but I love him so much. So I would highly recommend. And as a result of reading that series, I am really, really interested in reading more books from this author. And in particular, I know she's got an ice hockey series that I'm very tempted by, so we'll definitely be picking up another of her books very soon. Also in November, I read a book by Mila, Kane for the very first time, and I picked up Unholy Vows, which is book 1 in the original Sins duet. Now, it's called a duet, but was definitely a standalone book. It didn't end on a cliffhanger, and the couple absolutely got their HEA. So I'm not sure what is planned for the next book, and I haven't seen anything to indicate what she's writing next, because Mila Kane also writes dark ice hockey romances as well, and she's been continuing with that series, so I'm not sure when she's going to return to this one. However, I did really enjoy this one, rated it 4 stars, and it's an Italian mafia, age gap, forced marriage, romance, and basically a situation where the heroine sees something she shouldn't, which basically means that she's forced into marrying this guy. So we're following Renato and Charlie. So Renato is, you know, very typical mafia hero. He's head of his mafia. He is, you know, very aggressive, kind of hero, over the top sort of hero, the kind of hero that we love. And then we have Charlie. Now, Charlie is a nurse, and she also has a second job as well, because basically she is the guardian for her younger sister Lucy, and so literally she works every hour possible, runs herself into the ground, basically trying to support her sister, make sure that she's okay, and like I say, therefore needs to have 2 jobs, and that's her main focus. Lucy, though, is a bit of a brat. She is not very grateful to her sister for all this hard work, and in fact just says she's boring. You know, you're boring, all you care about is work. She doesn't understand that the reason she cares about work so much is to make sure that Lucy is okay. Lucy gets in with the wrong crowd, and she starts hanging around with, you know, with an unsavoury character, shall we say, that ends up being her boyfriend. And then he leads her into a difficult situation where she then sees something she shouldn't in a warehouse, and people get hurt. Now, Charlie is a bit concerned about where Lucy is, so she's kind of followed her to this place as well. So now Lucy and Charlie are kind of hiding in this warehouse when some violent scene takes place. And something happens to Lucy's boyfriend, and then you know, it's not too long before they're picked up by Renato's mafia, and he assesses them to see what kind of danger they pose, and Charlie assures him that they're going to keep their mouth shut, they're not going to say anything to anyone, and Renato decides that he's going to give her a chance, but promises that if she steps out of line even a little bit, things are going to get more serious for her. Of course, Charlie is only happy to take this deal, but Lucy cannot keep her mouth shut and wants to go to the police about it, which forces Renato's hand, and he forces Charlie to marry him, and then Lucy has to kind of stay with them as well. And of course, Lucy is going to cause all kinds of problems for this couple. She really did get on my nerves, but other than that, I did enjoy this story and rated it 4 stars. So like I said at the beginning, if more books come out in this series, I'll definitely continue with it. And Mila Kane also does some dark ice hockey romances, which I'm also very interested in and will definitely pick up as soon as I can. Now, only the day before that I read the Mila Kane, I picked up a book by Kylie Kent, and it was called Relentless Devil. This one was book 1 in the Sons of Valentino series, and we were following Maddie and Theo. Now, unfortunately for this book and for this author, it had a very similar plot to Unholy Vows. Because I read them back to back on the same, you know, within 2 days of each other, it did mean that I kind of got confused about the plots in my head and who was who and what happened, and found it quite difficult to review afterwards because the 2 stories kept mingling in my head. As such, this one in particular became pretty forgettable, and I really struggled to remember what had actually happened in this book, because like Unholy Vows, in this one we have a main character who is working 2 jobs, and she's doing it for her sister because she's the guardian for her sister. Now, unlike Lucy in the previous book, Maddie's sister is wonderful, really nice girl. Unfortunately, she's very sick and she has problems with her kidneys, which basically means she needs dialysis, and ultimately she needs a kidney transplant. Now, our heroine Maddie meets our hero Theo, who is head of the mafia, when he nips into the coffee shop to get a coffee, and she actually accidentally spills coffee on him, but he instantly becomes obsessed with her, starts following her, doing a bit of stalking, and when another man in the coffee shop kind of gives her his number, Theo becomes very jealous and decides that he's going to follow her to a club and kind of then start to try and date her. At first, Maddie is very resistant to this because she knows who Theo is and she doesn't want to you know, date somebody in the mafia, but he is super sweet, super nice, and he starts doing some really cute things for her, and also is really sweet with her sister as well, to the point where he even forces all of his men, all his mafia, you know, soldiers to screen to see if they're going to be a match for this kidney. And so that is also, you know, quite disturbing in a way, but also quite sweet from a mafia hero perspective. So overall, I did enjoy this one, 4 stars, but like I said, it felt to me when I was reading them that it was quite similar to the book that I previously mentioned, and therefore I kind of couldn't 100% remember what I'd read in my mind, and as a result it's not one that I have, you know, raved about since or recommended in many book recommendations. However, like I said, it was a really enjoyable read, and if I remember to, then I will definitely go back and read more in this series. And then the last one that I want to mention today is Aidee James, and I basically read a very short duet from her, The Devil's Vow and The Devil's Own. Both books were just over 100 pages each. Together they were still less than a full length novel, but I absolutely loved it. You know, for a novella, obviously you've got to take that into account with this as well. But it was super fast paced. It was a very, very intriguing storyline, and you know, I just raced through it and thoroughly enjoyed it. Rated them collectively as 4 stars. Now this one was actually a cartel romance, which I don't read too many of those, but will definitely want to read more. And also it was an amnesia romance. What actually happens in this one is the book starts where the heroine is sort of running through a cornfield, men are chasing her and shooting at her, and to get away she jumps into a river. As she's going down the river, she kind of hits her head, and when she wakes up, it's 5 years later, and she is now married to the head of the Diablos cartel, and she cannot remember how she got there, what happened in the last 5 years, and why she would marry this man who she believed she hated, and in fact may have been the man that was chasing after her in the cornfield to start with. So I really, really enjoyed this one because it really sets up this fantastic mystery, and then we kind of have you know, a lot of mystery and intrigue as we go through the book trying to figure out what's going on. This does then involve flashbacks as well, so we go flashback to the past so that we can start to piece together what happened and what she can remember, and then as we move into the future, kind of where we're going from there. But like I say, I really, really enjoyed this one, and we'll definitely be reading more from this author. There's another book kind of in the same world as this one, which again is just a short novella, but she's also got some other series as well, which all look like mafia romances, and so we'll definitely be interested in picking one of those up. So there we go, that is 10 authors that I've read in the last 6 months who were new to me. I hadn't read them before, and basically what I thought of the book that I read and if I'd go on to read any more. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, I really appreciate it if you give this video a thumbs up, and remember to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content from me. And if you've read any of these authors, particularly the ones that I wasn't as keen on, if you've read any of their books that you said actually you picked the wrong one, I can recommend a much better one by this author, then please by all means let me know. You can pop that in the comments down below, or you can fill it in my book recommendation form as well. Also the link to that is in the description box down below. So all that's left for me to say is thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye. And so we're following we were following, don't I even write that down? I definitely think this was a standalone book. Can't see how it was offering a and SJT. It's not the most and I absolutely loved it. Of course, while she's there, she's gonna then another author that I picked up during the romance. Yes, I absolutely would. I love Mafia.